I never thought I'd be standing in my own living room, being told to leave the house I'd lived in for 35 years. But there I was, 2 weeks after burying my wife Margaret, watching her nephew Daniel walk through my front door like he owned the place. The signs were there from the beginning. I just didn't want to see them. Let me start from the beginning. Margaret and I bought this house in Aurora, just outside Toronto, back in 1989. We were young then, full of dreams. I was working as a mechanical engineer at Bombardier, and she was a nurse at South Lake Regional. We saved every penny for the down payment on this 3-bedroom bungalow with the big backyard that backed onto the forest. Margaret loved that backyard. She spent 20 years turning it into something magical. Flower beds everywhere. A little pond with koi fish. A gazebo we built together one summer when Emily was still in high school. Every Saturday morning, Margaret would be out there at dawn, coffee in one hand, pruning shears in the other. She knew every plant by name. Talked to them like they were old friends. The neighbors used to joke that our garden belonged in a magazine. She'd just laugh and say, "It's not about perfection, Robert. It's about love." The cancer took her fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the funeral. Pancreatic. By the time they found it, there was nothing anyone could do. I held her hand every single day in that hospital, and when she passed, I felt like half of me died with her. The doctors were kind, the nurses compassionate. But nothing prepares you for watching the person you've loved for 40 years take their last breath. The funeral was beautiful. Margaret would have loved it. White roses everywhere, her favorite hymns, people sharing stories about how she'd touched their lives. Her sister Patricia flew in from Vancouver with her son Daniel. I hadn't seen Daniel in probably 5 years. He'd moved to Calgary, working in oil and gas. Made good money from what Patricia told me. He seemed different at the funeral, though. Kept checking his phone, looking around the house like he was taking inventory. I caught him in our bedroom at one point, opening drawers. He said he was looking for tissues. Something felt off, but I was too numb with grief to process it. 3 days after we laid Margaret to rest, he showed up at my door. Early. 7 in the morning. I was still in my bathrobe. I hadn't been sleeping. The house felt too empty, too quiet without Margaret's voice, without the sound of her puttering around in the kitchen making that terrible herbal tea she loved. "Uncle Robert, we need to talk about the house." I made him coffee, thinking maybe he wanted to share some memories, talk about his aunt. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Margaret and I had eaten breakfast together for 3 decades. The same table where we'd helped Emily with her homework, where we'd played cards with friends, where Margaret had told me about her diagnosis while holding my hand so tight I thought my bones might break. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase, very professional looking, leather-bound. Inside were documents, legal papers with official stamps and signatures that looked real enough to fool anyone. "Aunt Margaret and I had an agreement," he said, sliding the papers across my kitchen table. "She signed the house over to me 2 years ago. This deed shows I'm the legal owner. She wanted to make sure I had security for my family." I stared at him. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might be having a heart attack. My hands started shaking. I had to put down my coffee mug because I was afraid I'd drop it. "That's impossible. Margaret would never." "I'm sorry, Uncle Robert. I know this is difficult. But look at the documents. Everything's properly notarized. Her signature, the date, everything. She made me promise not to tell you until after. Well, after. She didn't want you to worry. She thought it would be easier this way." The signature looked exactly like Margaret's. The flowing M with that little flourish she always did, the loop she always made on the G, the way she dotted her I's slightly off-center. There was a notary seal, official-looking, dated April 2024. There was even what looked like a letter from Margaret explaining why she was doing this, how she wanted to take care of her sister's son, how I'd be fine because of my pension and my savings from Bombardier. But Margaret would never. We'd made our wills together, sitting right here at this table with our lawyer back in 2015, everything to each other, and then to our daughter Emily in Vancouver. Simple, clear. We'd talked about it specifically. "This house goes to you, then to Emily," she'd said. "This is our legacy." "Daniel, this doesn't make any sense. We had wills done just a few years ago. Margaret left everything to me, then to Emily. We were very clear about that." He shrugged, almost sympathetic, like he was doing me a favor by being patient. Wills can be changed, Uncle Robert. People change their minds. Look, I don't want to make this harder than it needs to be. I'm giving you 90 days to sort out your affairs and find somewhere else to live. That's more than fair. That's generous, actually. My wife and kids need a bigger place. And honestly, this house is too much for you to maintain alone anyway. You're what, 67? You should be in a condo, somewhere with less upkeep. 90 days. To leave the home where I'd built my entire adult life, where we'd raised Emily, where Margaret had planted her roses and built her pond, where she'd died in our bedroom upstairs, holding my hand, telling me she'd loved every minute of our life together. Get out, I said quietly. Uncle Robert, get out of my house, now. He stood up, straightening his suit jacket like he was leaving a business meeting. I understand you're emotional. Grief does strange things to people. Take a few days to process this. My lawyer will be in touch. We'll make this as smooth as possible. I really am sorry it has to be this way. Aunt Margaret would want us to handle this like adults. After he left, I sat at that table for 3 hours, staring at those documents. Everything looked legitimate. The paper quality was right, thick and official. The stamps looked real, the signatures. God, they looked so much like Margaret's handwriting. How could this be real? How could Margaret have done this without telling me? We told each other everything, every single thing. Then I remembered something Margaret used to say. Robert, you're the engineer, the logical one, but I'm the one who pays attention to details. She kept everything. Every document, every receipt, every piece of paper that came into this house. She had a filing system in the basement office that would make a librarian weep with joy. Color-coded folders, alphabetized, dated. If she'd signed something this important, there would be copies. There would be something. I spent the rest of that day and most of the night going through her files. Our original will from 2015, witnessed and notarized properly. Property tax records going back to 1989, always in both our names. The original deed from when we bought the house, both signatures. Mortgage discharge papers from 2014 when we finally paid it off after 25 years, celebrated with champagne in the backyard. Every insurance document, every renovation permit, every utility bill. Everything showed joint ownership, joint responsibility, joint decision-making. But nothing about signing the house over to Daniel. Nothing at all. Not even a note, not a conversation recorded anywhere. Margaret kept a day planner, wrote everything down. Doctor's appointments, lunch dates, when she watered the plants. No mention of meeting with lawyers. No mention of Daniel except for his birthday and Christmas card reminders. The next morning, my hands were still shaking when I called Emily in Vancouver. She was getting ready for work, her 2 kids in the background arguing about cereal. Dad, is everything okay? You sound terrible. I told her everything. About Daniel showing up, about the documents, about the 90-day deadline. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Dad, that's insane. Mom would never do that. She didn't even like Daniel that much. Don't you remember Christmas 2019? She said he only showed up when he wanted something. She said he reminded her of Grandpa Jack before the gambling got bad. That desperate look in his eyes. I know, sweetheart. But these documents look so real. What if I'm wrong? What if she did this and didn't tell me because she knew I'd be upset? Dad, stop. Listen to me. Mom told me everything. When she got sick, she made me promise I'd look after you. She made me promise I'd make sure you kept the house, kept the garden going. She said that house was your whole life together. She would never, ever sign it away to Daniel. Never. But the signatures. Dad, you need a lawyer. Today. Right now. She gave me the name of a real estate lawyer in Toronto, Richard Chen, someone her colleague had used. I called his office at 9 o'clock, explained the situation to his receptionist. She must have heard the panic in my voice because she said, "Hold on, let me see if Mr. Chen can squeeze you in today." He saw me that afternoon. His office was in a high-rise downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Richard was in his 40s, sharp, professional, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. He spread Daniel's documents across his mahogany desk and put on reading glasses. "Mr. Thompson, may I be very direct with you? Please, I need to know the truth. These are very good forgeries, probably cost whoever made them a fair bit of money. But they're still forgeries. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. How can you tell? He pointed to the notary seal with his pen. This notary seal is from Ontario. The format and security features changed in 2023 as part of an anti-fraud initiative. This seal shows the old format, but it's dated April 2024. That's impossible. It's like using an old driver's license design after they've changed the template. Anyone who knows what to look for would catch it immediately. He pulled out his phone, opened the Law Society of Ontario website. Also, I looked up this notary's registration number while you were in the waiting room. Sandra Mitchell, registration number here. She retired in March 2021 and moved to Portugal with her husband. I found her LinkedIn. She wasn't even in the country when this was supposedly notarized. She certainly wasn't practicing. So Daniel hired someone to make very sophisticated fake documents. The signature analysis will confirm it, but I'd bet my license your wife never signed these. Do you have her actual signature on documents from around that time? Late 2023, early 2024? I pulled out the insurance papers from her last policy renewal, January 2024. I'd brought everything I could find. Richard laid them side by side, pulled out a magnifying glass. See here? Different pen pressure. The slant on certain letters is off by about 5 degrees. This G here has a different terminal stroke. This was done by someone studying her signature, probably from old documents, practicing until they got close. But it's not her actual hand. A forensic document examiner will be able to prove this definitively. What do I do? Richard leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. First, we file a police report today. This is fraud, forgery, uttering forged documents, and attempted theft over $5,000. Second, we get an emergency injunction preventing him from taking any action regarding the property. Third, we counter with your legitimate deed and will. And fourth, he looked at me seriously, we find out why he's doing this. People don't commit this level of fraud without being desperate. There's a story here, and we need to know what it is. The police took my statement that evening at my kitchen table. Detective Sarah Morrison was in her 30s, compassionate but thorough. She spent 2 hours going through everything, photographing the documents, taking notes. Mr. Thompson, I'm going to be honest with you. These cases can take months to resolve. Family fraud is complicated, emotionally charged. But from what I'm seeing here, and from what your lawyer told me when he called, you have a very strong case. We'll start by investigating Mr. Whitmore's background, his financial situation. See what we can find. Often these schemes come from desperation. What they found was worse than I imagined. Detective Morrison called me 4 days later. Mr. Thompson, can you come down to the station? There's some information you need to hear, and I'd rather tell you in person. I drove down, Emily on speakerphone the whole way because she was worried about me driving while stressed. The station was busy, phones ringing, people coming and going. Detective Morrison led me to a small interview room with a table and uncomfortable chairs. We've been digging into Daniel Whitmore's life. It's not pretty. She laid out a file. Bank statements, credit reports, employment records. Daniel Whitmore was broke. Not just broke, but drowning in debt that would pull down a submarine. He'd lost his job with the oil company 6 months earlier, laid off in a round of cuts. His severance package ran out after 3 months. His wife didn't know. He'd been hiding it, pretending to go to work every day, sitting in coffee shops and libraries, applying for jobs that never called back. Meanwhile, the bills piled up like snow in a blizzard. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage in Calgary, a big house in a nice neighborhood they couldn't afford. Foreclosure proceedings had already started. He owed $73,000 on credit cards, all maxed out. His truck, a new F-150 he'd bought during the boom times, was about to be repossessed. He'd borrowed money from friends, family, even loan sharks. He was paying 18% interest to some very bad people. And then his aunt died, leaving a house in the Toronto area worth at least $900,000 in the current market. Maybe more if you got the right buyer. He saw an opportunity, Detective Morrison explained, pulling out more documents. He'd been to your house for family events over the years. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Emily's graduation party. He probably photographed documents when no one was looking. Bathrooms, offices, anywhere he could get a few minutes alone. He studied your wife's signature, probably practiced it hundreds of times. Then he found a forger, probably through some of those loan sharks he was dealing with, paid what little he had left, maybe $3,000 to $5,000, to create these papers. His plan was simple: get you out, sell the house fast to a cash buyer, take the money, and disappear before anyone caught on. But the house wasn't Margaret's alone to give. It was both of ours. Joint ownership. He was counting on you not fighting back. You're elderly, grieving, alone, no kids living nearby. He thought you'd just accept it and leave. Maybe you'd be confused. Maybe you'd think Margaret really had done this and you'd just forgotten or never knew. A lot of financial predators target vulnerable seniors exactly this way. They bank on confusion, grief, isolation. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd experienced in my 67 years. This was Margaret's nephew, family. Someone we'd welcomed into our home for 20 years. Someone Margaret had sent birthday cards to, Christmas presents, even money once when he said he was short. She'd been at his wedding, held his first baby, sent care packages when times were tough, and he'd forged her signature, 2 weeks after her death. Forged the signature of a woman who'd loved him, who'd treated him like a son, who'd worried about him. Used her death as an opportunity to steal everything we'd built together. What happens now? Now, we build a case. We've already contacted the forger through our organized crime unit. He's looking at his own charges, and people like that usually cooperate to reduce their sentence. We'll get a forensic document examiner, the best in Ontario. We'll trace Daniel's movements, his phone records, his financial transactions, and we'll charge him. This isn't a civil matter anymore, Mr. Thompson. This is criminal. Richard filed everything within a week. The injunction came through fast. Daniel couldn't touch the property, couldn't contact me, couldn't do anything. Then the police laid charges. Fraud over $5,000, a serious, indictable offense. Forgery, uttering forged documents. Attempted theft. Elder abuse, which carried additional penalties. His wife found out when the police showed up at their door in Calgary to execute a search warrant. They seized his computer, his phone, documents from his home office. She called me 3 days later, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I thought we were doing fine. He told me work was great. I had no idea about the job, the debt, any of it. I would never have let him do this. Your wife was always so kind to me. I know, Jennifer. This isn't your fault. I'm taking the kids to my parents in Edmonton. I've filed for divorce. I can't be married to someone who would do this, who would target a grieving widower. What kind of person does that? Patricia called from Vancouver the next day. Margaret's sister, Daniel's mother. Her voice was thick with shame and grief. Robert, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to apologize for this. I raised him better than this. I thought I did. It's not your fault, Patricia. He's my son. I should have seen the signs. Margaret always saw things I didn't. She told me once, maybe 2 years ago, that Daniel was reminding her of Dad. The gambling, the desperation, the schemes. I got mad at her, told her she was being unfair. She was right. She was always right. She must be turning in her grave. The court date was set for August, 4 months away. In the meantime, Daniel had to surrender his passport. Flight risk, the Crown attorney said. He was living in a basement apartment in Mississauga, sharing it with 2 other guys, working at a call center for $12 an hour, trying to scrape together money for a criminal defense lawyer, while his entire life collapsed around him like a house with a bad foundation. Emily flew out to stay with me for 2 weeks in June. We went through Margaret's things together, something I couldn't face doing alone. We packed up her clothes for donation, organized photos into albums, labeled everything so Emily would know the stories behind each picture. In the basement office, behind the filing cabinet where Margaret kept all our important documents, we found something I'd never seen before. A box of Margaret's journals, going back 20 years. Leather-bound books where she'd written her thoughts, her fears, her hopes, her observations about life. I almost didn't read them. It felt like a violation, like reading someone's mail. But Emily said, Dad, maybe there's something in here that will help with the case. Maybe she wrote about Daniel, about suspicions she had. There was an entry from March 2024, just 3 months before she died, before the diagnosis that would change everything. Saw Daniel today when Patricia called on video chat. He looked different, stressed, dark circles under his eyes, kept talking about money, opportunities, investments that sounded too good to be true. That same frantic energy Dad had before he lost everything at the casino. That desperate look in the eyes, like a drowning man seeing a rope. That false confidence that covers fear. I told Robert after the call that something felt off. He said, "I worry too much." Maybe I do. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Daniel's doing okay out there in Calgary. But something felt wrong. Made me think we should review our will again. Make absolutely sure everything is airtight. Make sure Robert is protected if anything happens to me. He works so hard. He deserves to keep this house, this life we built. I need to call our lawyer next week. She'd seen it. Even then, 6 months before she died, she'd sensed something was desperately wrong with Daniel, and she'd tried to protect me. We brought the journal to Richard. He photocopied the relevant pages, added them to the evidence file. "This shows state of mind," he explained. "It shows your wife had concerns about Daniel, was thinking about protecting you, had no intention of giving him the house. It's powerful supporting evidence." The trial was faster than expected. Daniel's lawyer, a public defender who looked fresh out of law school, tried to argue that the documents were legitimate, that there might have been some misunderstanding, that perhaps Mrs. Thompson had signed something without fully understanding what it was. But the forensic document examiner destroyed that theory. Dr. Patricia Wong, 40 years of experience, testified for 2 hours about pressure points, ink analysis, stroke patterns, hesitation marks. "These signatures were created by someone copying from a reference document," she said, showing enlarged images on a screen. "You can see here where they paused, lifted the pen, checked their reference, continued. A natural signature flows. This one stutters." The retired notary, Sandra Mitchell, testified via video from her apartment in Lisbon, white-haired, wearing glasses, very precise in her answers. "I retired in March 2021. My last day was March 19th. I notarized my final document on March 18th. I moved to Portugal on April 3rd. I have never notarized any document for Daniel Whitmore. I have never met Daniel Whitmore. My seal was decommissioned and destroyed according to proper protocol. The forger Daniel had hired, a man named Marcus Chen, who'd been tracked down in Hamilton and arrested on unrelated charges, took a plea deal. He testified that Daniel had paid him $3,000 in cash to create fake property transfer documents. He showed me examples of the wife's signature. He gave me all the information I needed. The notary seal, I bought it online, from the dark web, cost $200. It's old, but most people don't know the difference. The Crown attorney, a sharp woman in her 50s named Jennifer Walsh, was merciless in her closing argument. "This isn't a case of misunderstanding or miscommunication. This is calculated fraud. Mr. Whitmore saw his aunt's death as an opportunity. He saw a grieving widower, vulnerable, alone, and he pounced like a predator. He forged documents. He hired a criminal to help him. He lied repeatedly. He tried to steal a home worth $900,000, and he did it all while his uncle was mourning the love of his life. There is no mitigation here. This is elder abuse at its worst." The judge, a gray-haired man who looked like he'd seen everything, wasn't sympathetic. "Mr. Whitmore, I've presided over many cases in my 23 years on the bench. This one disturbs me deeply. You targeted a vulnerable senior citizen during his darkest hour. You forged your deceased aunt's signature, a woman who by all accounts cared for you deeply. You attempted to steal a home worth nearly $1 million. You violated the most basic bonds of family trust. You showed no remorse until you were caught. This court finds you guilty on all charges. 3 years in federal prison, restitution order for my legal fees, which had climbed to $42,000. Permanent criminal record. His professional engineering license, which he'd worked so hard to get, revoked permanently. The foreclosure on his Calgary house went through while he was awaiting sentencing. His wife was granted full custody of the children with a restraining order preventing him from contact. His mother, Patricia, Had to take out a loan to help Jennifer and the kids get settled in Edmonton. Detective Morrison told me later, after everything was done, that Daniel had been planning to sell my house to a numbered company run by some of his loan shark contacts. They would have flipped it fast, laundered the money, and Daniel would have taken his cut and fled to Mexico. He had a one-way ticket booked for September 15th, right after he thought he'd have forced me out. They found the ticket confirmation when they searched his computer. Cancun. New identity papers already in process. He was going to disappear and leave his wife and children with nothing but debt. I sat in that courtroom and watched him being led away in handcuffs. His mother, Patricia, was sobbing in the gallery. Her son was going to prison. Her family was destroyed. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was a good person who'd raised a son who made terrible choices when desperation hit. But another part of me, the part that had spent 3 months living in fear of losing everything Margaret and I had built, the part that had lain awake at night wondering if my wife had really betrayed me, the part that had to fight for my own home while grieving the love of my life, felt nothing but relief that justice had been served. Emily helped me clean out the basement office after it was all over. We found more of Margaret's journals, boxes of photos I hadn't seen in years, pictures of us young, just married, standing in front of this house the day we got the keys. Margaret pregnant with Emily, glowing. Emily's first day of school, Christmases, birthdays, a life documented in thousands of moments. In one box, wrapped in tissue paper, there was an envelope with my name on it in Margaret's handwriting. Inside was a letter she'd written but never sent, dated a week before her diagnosis. My darling Robert, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't know when or how, but I wanted to make sure you knew some things. Every day with you was a gift beyond measure. This house, our garden, our life together. All of it was more than I ever dreamed possible when we were young. Keep the house, Robert. Keep our home. Don't let anyone tell you that you should leave, that it's too much, that you should downsize. This is your home. This is our legacy. Fill it with memories. Fill it with family. Keep planting flowers in the garden. Watch the koi grow old. Sit in our gazebo and read your books. This is your home. You built this life. You earned every brick, every beam, every moment of peace in these walls. Don't let anyone take it from you. You're stronger than you think. You're braver than you know. And you're loved beyond words. I'm still in the house. It's been 8 months since the trial, a year since Margaret died. Emily visits every month now, brings the grandkids. We plant new flowers in Margaret's garden every spring, just like she wanted. I hired a neighborhood teenager to help with the heavy work, but I do the planting myself. The koi are fat and happy. I sit in the gazebo sometimes on Saturday mornings, coffee in hand, reading, remembering Margaret out there with her pruning shears, talking to her flowers. Patricia came to visit last month. We met at a cafe, neutral ground. She brought flowers for Margaret's grave. We talked about Daniel, about addiction, about desperation, about how family can disappoint you in ways you never imagined possible. He writes me letters from prison, she said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Says he's sorry. Says he didn't know who he'd become. Says he looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize himself. Do you believe him? I don't know. I want to. He's my son. But what he tried to do to you, to Margaret's memory. She trailed off, tears in her eyes. She would have been so angry with him. So disappointed. Margaret saw it coming. I told her. She knew something was wrong with him. She wrote about it in her journal. Patricia nodded slowly. She always was the perceptive one. I miss her so much. I wish she was here. She'd know what to do. She always knew what to do. We cried together that afternoon, two people who'd lost someone they loved, connected by grief and betrayal and the complicated mess that families can become. I think about Daniel sometimes, in those early morning hours when sleep won't come and the house is too quiet. I think about how his desperation destroyed his entire life. His marriage, his career, his freedom, his relationship with his children, his future. All for a house he was never going to get. All because he couldn't face his problems honestly. Couldn't ask for help. Couldn't admit he was drowning until he dragged everyone down with him. My lawyer Richard calls every few months to check in. Wants to make sure I'm doing okay. That no one else is trying to take advantage of me. He's become something of a friend. Invited me to his family's Christmas party last year. Mr. Thompson, what you went through, it's more common than people think. Adult children, nieces, nephews, they see aging parents or relatives as opportunities. Estate fraud is a $2 billion problem in Canada. Most cases never make it to court because the victims are too scared or too confused to fight back. You fought. You won. That's rare. That's important. I don't feel like I won anything. I just kept what was already mine. But I understand what he means. I stood up for myself when I could have crumbled. I honored Margaret's memory by protecting what we'd built together. The house is quiet now. Sometimes too quiet. But it's mine. It's ours. It's Margaret's legacy. It's the life we built together, brick by brick, year by year, with love and patience and commitment. And no one, not Daniel, not anyone, can take that away. I'm 67 years old. My doctor says I'm in good health. I might have another 20 years in this house, maybe more. 20 more years of grandkids in the backyard, playing where their mother played. 20 more years of watching Margaret's flowers bloom every spring, each one a reminder of her touch. 20 more years of sitting in that gazebo on Saturday mornings, coffee in hand, remembering the woman who made it all possible. Home isn't just property. It's not just walls and a roof and a piece of land. It's memories. It's love. It's every moment you've lived within those walls. Every laugh. Every tear. Every ordinary Tuesday evening when nothing special happened except that you were together. It's the life you build, brick by brick, year by year, with the person you love most in the world. And that's worth fighting for. That's worth standing up for. Even when you're scared and grieving, and the whole world feels like it's falling apart. Margaret knew that. She tried to tell me in that letter I found. She tried to protect me even after she was gone. I'm keeping her garden alive. I'm keeping her koi fed. I'm keeping her home, our home, standing strong. And I'll keep doing that for as long as I draw breath. That's my promise to her. That's my way of saying I love you one more time. Home is love, and love is worth everything.